Hey guys, my name is Court, and today we're going to be talking about how to create a full stack web application. Um, we'll get into more detail later, but basically we're going with like a Node.js stack. So who am I? This is actually my first YouTube video ever. I'm very excited to be here with you guys. I've been wanting to create content for a while now. I've been in the web development field as a full stack developer for the past couple of years. So I wouldn't say I'm like senior level or, I'm probably around mid level, but I thought it'd be nice to share the experiences I have with you guys, and hopefully we can learn to be better programmers together as we go throughout this project with each other. But I do have a bachelor's degree in computer science. I did go to a 4 year university and that kind of thing. So these are kind of just a list of what the type of technologies we're going to use. Um, for Angular, we're gonna be for the front end, we're gonna be using Angular, backend Express. For like my CSS framework, I'm gonna be going with Angular Material, but you guys are totally free to use whatever you want. I know that Angular has a integration with Bootstrap, so that's also a possibility. Now, one thing that I do want to explain to you guys, I want to walk through the process of creating a full stack web application from start to finish. I have always found that it's difficult on YouTube to find a content creator that goes through every single step from setting up a server to host your website to creating a nice user interface with a fully fleshed out application that could have some real world uh, uses and that kind of thing. So I want to do everything. I want to do the back end, the front end. I want to do the virtual machine management stuff, setting up Nginx, the whole get go. And we'll also be doing like version control and project management. And we'll also be talking about how to Dockerize your application for those fast deployments and just a whole bunch of stuff. And I just want to go through the whole process with you guys. I'm going to be very straightforward. I'm definitely more hands-on than I am theory, so we won't be talking about too much like Angular's compiler or that kind of thing. We're going to be talking about just the more practical things on how do you get it set up and everything. And if you guys are interested in that theory and things like that, it's always best to go through the documentation to figure out how the engine works and everything. So here's kind of just a big picture of how everything's going to work. It's very simplified, but the idea is that we're going to be using MongoDB Atlas as our database. Atlas being the cloud service that they have, that it's for free, um, for up to 512 megabytes. So we're going to be going with Mongo, but I'm actually more of a SQL person. So if you guys do end up wanting to do a SQL database as well, I can include that in this project, but it's got to get enough likes to be able to do something like that. So give a shout out to SQL if you guys are wanting to see that also. Um, but the user is going to basically be making requests to our Amazon Web Service virtual machine. It's a EC2 instance with Ubuntu. We're going to have Nginx handle the requests that are coming in with reverse proxy and things like that. It's going to hit our front end. And I've also named where we're going to be going with a microservice architecture. So we're going to have two separate repositories. We're going to have an Express server. I'm calling mine Mabel. And we're also going to have a front end repository called Artemis. And I like to give my projects an actual name. Usually they're following some kind of Norse god or Greek god, just something kind of cool and not normal. But so Artemis will be the front end, and Mabel is going to be our back end. Well, guys, I hope you are as excited as I am for this project. But um, for me, this project is actually going to be my new website for my YouTube channel. It's going to be codingwithcourt.com. Domain name pending. Okay, so as I said, we're going to go through every step of the process together, and I'm going to be more focused on the actual, you know, doing it than like how do you do it kind of thing. Um, but if you guys ever want me to do like a short tutorial series of like how do you use version control, the different commands, or specifically focused on Express or specifically focused just on Angular, we can do that kind of thing. But I'm just going to show you guys the style and how I organize my projects and just different things like that. But we're going to start with GitHub today. It's basically a place where we can host our code with version control for free. I've created a new organization here called Coding with Court, and so we're going to create our repositories. And a repository is just where we store our code. So we'll go ahead and make Mabel. This is our Express server for codingwithcourt.com. All right, so here's my repository. I'm going to do the same thing for the front end. So, and they're just going to be empty for now. Do Artemis. Sure. I don't know if I think this one's private, but I don't know if yeah, okay, so they're both private. If you guys want access to my code, uh, I can make these public, but if no one really asks me, I'm just going to keep them as private. Let's switch to VS Code though. Okay. So you're going to want to find a good place to put all of your projects. So, okay. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Coding with Court. This is where I'm going to put all of my YouTube projects. Okay, so I'm going to want to cd into that. Let me go ahead and shut off my audio here. All right. Okay, so in here, I've already have Angular installed, but I'm going to be including a bunch of links in the YouTube description so you guys don't have to go searching for everything. But I'm just gonna, we're using Node, and so npm is like a package manager for Node. So I'm gonna install the Angular CLI globally. I should already have it installed to the latest version, but okay, so I'm gonna say ng new Artemis. And this is gonna create my Angular front end project. I personally don't like using the strict version of Angular, so I'm going to say no. I do want Angular routing. I prefer SCSS, but you guys can choose whichever one you want to stick with. This may take a bit, but it's creating everything from scratch. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of applications you guys are wanting to go for, but following along with this kind of project would be very good for a portfolio kind of website that you can put on your resume, which I do have a portfolio website, and it's very good to add something like that to your resume. And guys, I just copy and pasted some commands from GitHub that were automatically generated, or that were shown to me. So I just copied these three here and I just pasted them. All it does is this creates a new branch called main. You could leave yours as masters, but I'll just go with the new trend that they've been doing. I've noticed they've switched to main, and I'm adding the origin URL, and I'm pushing to a remote branch that is named main. Okay, so let's log in here. Okay. Yep. 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 Just VS Code asking if it can authenticate with my account information. All right. So we're clean. and our branch is up to date on origin main. So now if I going into here, if I control F5, you can see that all of my stuff is now on. It's all online now. Whoops. All right. I prefer to use full screen for GitHub whenever I'm recording. Or I'm sorry, not GitHub, but VS Code. Just I think it's easier for people to see when they're watching a video. Close out of that. And we'll close out of this. I tend to have a ton of different tabs open, usually not different Chrome windows, but before we start getting into the code, we want to make sure we have our entire project set up. So let's go ahead and now beforehand I use ng-new to create our front end, but since we're using Express, it's going to be more of a vanilla way of starting your project with Node.js. So I'm going to clone my repository in here. It's going to be empty, but I just already want everything initialized. Okay, so let's go into Mabel. And I think it'll be easier to start with Express since it's kind of more, I feel like it's more lightweight than Angular. It's mostly everything's just vanilla JavaScript with it. But we're going to say npm init. We're creating a new Node.js project. So we'll leave the version as 1.0.0, description, Express server. And don't worry, this kind of thing can be, you can update this information whenever. It's actually going to be server.js. I'll leave that blank. Yep, that's my repository. Express, JavaScript, JS, just whatever you guys think you should add. This is more of when you're tagging for like npm if you actually publish your package. And I'm just going to leave the normal licensing. Yep, everything looks good. Package.json is created. Now, I won't go into too much in depth of how npm and Node works, but this is basically the metadata information for our project. So when we start adding dependencies into our project, this will start to get filled out. And so whenever people clone my project, they can get all of the same packages and dependencies I have by running just a few simple commands. But also it does depend on the complexity of your project and what technologies you're using. But let's go ahead and start installing things we'll need. So we're going to need Express. Just save. I want to add the save command here. We're going to want to add Helmet. Helmet's a kind of like a middleware security layer for Express. We want cores. I really like using underscore. We could go really in depth with underscore, but it's a really great package. I would highly recommend it to anybody. We're going to be using MongoDB, so I want Mongoose. It's kind of like an ORM for Mongo. I'm trying to remember. Oh, we need Moment because working with vanilla JavaScript dates is just not fun. We'll also add body parser, which is another middleware that we can use with Express. And guys, we'll get into logging too, such as like Winston to generate server logs for us, custom server logs and things like that. But I think this is a good place to start with our installs. Now I am using save because these dependencies are necessary for the project, so I want to keep them the way they are. And I'll also want to add nodemon. I'm doing this separately because this is a dev dependency. I will not be using nodemon for running production, and I don't recommend it. But yeah, we're going to be setting up both the front and back end for production and dev. So you guys are going to see the whole process of how to get everything started, and from start to finish, really. That's the way I'm trying to structure this tutorial series. But I'm adding .gitignore because I don't know if you saw that earlier, but on the left hand side, this shows all the changes since since the branch has been like committed or updated. So there's 2,924 new files I've added. And if you're wondering why so many files are here, it's because of all the different packages I just installed and their dependencies. So whenever you have a Node.js application and you have version control with it, you always want to ignore it, because this would take forever to push to my branch. So the package.json, you can see that we now have dependencies, the dev dependencies, and you can see another file was generated called packagelock.json, and this is the actual versions that we're using for our project. And this is kind of long, but it's all necessary. It's not too often where I have to go in here and look at things, but you can run into situations with Node where dependencies are breaking your project, and it's just very frustrating to deal with. But we're also going to install .env to have .env files, and I am saving that. I forgot to add that. But we're going to create two new files here, .env and .env.dist. Now, in the gitignore, so on your .envs, you usually want to put information in here like API keys, secret tokens that you need, database hosts, passwords, ports, everything. This is local to your project. It's important to have a .env, especially if you're working with other people. But even if you're not working with other people, with your software, you should always assume that somebody's going to be coming in and working alongside you or just looking over your code. You should never have a tunneled vision of your code. You should always be open to different things, or to people coming in and looking at your code. Because when you do go into when you start working professionally, it's very rare where you're the only person on a project. And even if you are, you need to follow good guidelines and things like that. But so we have our .env and .env.dist. Later on, we'll be filling these out. But I want to ignore the .env because this might have passwords and things like that, and I don't want anybody else to be seeing this. So we'll leave it here. But normally, you can add variables like host port. Generally, I do 3000. The host name, so it's going to be localhost. And then later on, we can, database user, database password, things like that. I just leave these blank for now. Just copy them here, and you can put default values in here. But the .env.dist is so if you have any members on your project, whenever they clone your repository, they know what environment variables you're using, and they can customize it for their own needs. But we're gonna save both of these. Okay, so let's go ahead and start our server script. And guys, if this pace is too slow or too fast, just let me know, and I'll try to accommodate. But we're just going to start out with a very simple Express application. So I'm going to require Express. And I'm going to create my application. It's going to be Express. So we're going to be doing our first API endpoint. And just going to be that. Guys, I like to go with the ES6 syntax. So I don't always do it, but I prefer to do it. So we'll say res.send hello. Oh. Hello world. app.listen. This is a good place where we can start bringing in our .env stuff. Can't quite remember the syntax because you only need to initialize this once if you do it at the top of your file. Okay, so it should just be .env.config from what I'm looking at on their documentation. It's very important that you guys try to look up library documentation to figure out how to do things, because you're going to be asked to do a lot of different things at work that you will have never done before. You just don't do often enough to remember. Okay, we're going to have a callback function here, nothing inside. And I want to say console.log. I'm doing inline. I think it's called inline with these strings here, but listening at, so process.env dot, again coming from here, so our host name, so HTTP, and our port, it will go here. Okay. All right. Now there'll be, using array brackets here. I've been doing that recently. I don't know why. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to run our application and see if it's working. So I'm going to say nodemon dot. Now nodemon is going to be watching for changes in these files. So whenever I save, it automatically reloads the entire project. So keeps things nice and simple. Let's bring up Postman. I'm a big believer in Postman. I know VS Code has extensions to run API requests, but I really enjoy Postman. And looks like I already have test API here for Mabel. So I created a collection here earlier. All right, so it looks like we're getting hello world. And if you wanted to do this in a tab, you could too, since it's Git. This is a Git method. Yep. So our server's running smoothly, but there's a couple things we're going to want to add here. Okay, so we definitely want helmet involved and cores so that our website can make requests. If you don't add cores, then you have to add configuration in your Angular project, but that configuration is only used for development. So I always just start out with cores, and I completely ignore that step because it only works that proxy pass with that configuration file in Angular. I always skip that part because it really doesn't last, so there's just no reason for it. I'm actually going to put the config for my environment variables at the top, this file. And let's go ahead and add middleware. And how we add middleware is with this app.use function. So it's important to add documentation as well. So we'll just say middleware. But also going to be adding cores. So it'll be something like that, I believe. This kind of thing, whenever you start a Express server, it's just a one-time thing. I don't really find myself configuring these too much. But so we got our cores, we got helmet going. Now we need to add body parser. All right, so let's go ahead and require it. Guys, you will almost never see me using var. I always prefer const or let. So body parser All right. So I'm going to say app.use bodyparser.json. So now oh, looks like this is deprecated. I think Express might actually, with its new update, yeah, I think I can do that instead. So I might not even need body parser anymore. And if that's the case, I'm going to remove body parser just by erasing the dependency there. It won't clean up the package lock or anything, but the next time somebody comes in here to install this project, it'll be out of there. Alright, so it looks like everything is working the way it should. I'm happy with the setup for now because we need to set up our Angular project. So let me go ahead and so this is our initial commit. And we're going ahead and git push. Normally, the reason it looked that long was because of the package lock.json, but normally you never just want to push on a master, but because this is the initial commit and I'm alone on this project, I am going to be fine with that. But let's go ahead and am I still running? That's okay. Normally whenever I'm working, we do everything in microservices, so I usually end up having multiple VS codes open. Alright. So let's actually run our Angular application. And we do this in development by saying ngserve. Do not recommend deploying your website with ngserve when you move on to production. You should use ngbuild, but I have seen people use ngserve. Makes me really sad to see that. But as you can see, we have our Angular application running, and we can hit our server, and we now have our two separate applications set up. Now, one thing we should do is set up MongoDB Atlas. I do already have mine set up. Yep, it looks like I'm already logged in. Now, I'd run through this video. I think this is the second time I'm recording this. But I'm going to be trying to record my videos without running through them to begin with, because I feel like it's best to see things as they come instead of being super planned out and perfect, because my code's not always going to be perfect. But I feel like I want this to be as realistic as possible. So I want you guys to see the whole development process with this. It looks like I don't remember my username or password. Alright, so I have already created a cluster, but let's go ahead. Let's create a new project. I want to call this Coding with Court, and this is, I'll keep all my clusters in here, but primarily for now it's just going to be the actual website for my YouTube channel. Let's create the project. We won't go through database connection stuff yet because this video is already kind of running long, but we'll build the cluster together. I'm going with the free version, 512 megabytes, which is nice. And by the way, that Amazon EC2 instance, it's free for up to 12 months. So if you're looking for a job or you're a student and you're getting ready to graduate, you should really have something like this on your resume. especially if if you're in the interview room and you get the chance to just open your phone, navigate to your website and say, "Hey, here's my full stack web application using Angular and a Node.js stack." Pretty impressive for a student for sure. It's so funny when I was going through college, it wasn't until my junior year I actually started using version control. And whenever I would get into these group projects, no one would know what version control was. Everybody just swapping flash drives to update their projects. It's just crazy that not a single professor at my university mentioned version control. I feel like something that important should definitely be discussed. But let's go ahead and start doing some project management stuff. All right. So now I feel like GitHub's integration with like project management is very, very basic, but I think it works pretty well, especially with being a free tool. So we're gonna create an issue here, and this is kind of like if you want to dish out tasks to people in your on your team, this is where you would go to do it. Project management in DevOps is very important. So we'll just make a very, very simple task here and say add Angular material. This is one command really. Um, so let's go ahead and give out a to-do list here. So this uses Markdown. So I'm using Markdown syntax. We'll get a checkbox list here. But add Angular material. And there's a particular command for it. I just can't remember off the top of my head. Let's create a home component. Add side navigation. Add top toolbar. I usually prefer these to be fixed so that when the user scrolls throughout the pages, they stick to the side, and you can preview it, and this is what it looks like. But I'm going to assign it to myself. We'll customize these labels, but this is going to be a new feature or request. We should be good there. We don't have any projects right now, but we'll go ahead and submit the new issue. So here's our issue. You can assign people these. And actually, we will set up a project. So my new project board, let's call this this is going to be our initial release. We're going to be working towards our initial release. I don't really feel like putting a description, but we'll go ahead and do the full triggers implementation here. So we don't have to, if we update the issue, we don't have to keep going back and forth. But just delete that. Delete that. Delete that. It's so funny. Like if you're in college right now and you're watching this as a student, please use GitHub and do this kind of thing. And if you were going to my university, your professors would be blown away, and so would the people in your group. And it's really, you really want to share your knowledge, especially, when you're slightly ahead of your peers, just to kind of give everybody a nice boost. All right, so it looks like we got our first cluster going here, and for some reason it's named cluster 0. I'm not too familiar with Atlas's interface, so I don't even know if I can change that, but that's fine. And we don't really need to do anything here, but I think this is a good place to stop the video. We have our entire project set up. We have our Express server, we have our Angular project. We've started our DevOps here. Very simple. You can definitely go into more detail with this kind of stuff. But I think this is a good place to stop. And guys, I'm always open to feedback and some criticism. So if you really like this video, please give it a like. And if you want to keep seeing content like this, please subscribe to my channel. It would really help me out since I'm just starting out. But if this channel ever gets big, we'll open up a Discord channel and we can start doing more community-based things. But just let me know what you guys like and what direction you want to go in. I plan on using some authentication with like login and things like that. Possibly doing something with Stripe so we can look at, how do you make transactions on the server side and front end. But you guys let me know what you think about the plan for that. And if you guys have anything that you would really like to see, we can do that as well. Because I do a lot of GIS data stuff, so I think that'd be cool to add Esri map to this project because I have not seen any videos on YouTube with ArcGIS and things like that. So thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate your time and attention, and we'll catch you in the next video.